We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. 2021.
Thank you, Poncho Man, bringing us back to the big island of Hawaii. My name is Bob Babbitt. This is Breakfast with Bob, Not Quite Kona edition. We are brought to you by Challenge North America, Credo Tri, UCAN, Hoka, One, Velo Fix, Norma Tech, Canyon Bikes, and of course our Challenge Athletes Foundation. We just sent out 3,038 grants totaling $5.1 million to keep challenged athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest, Mr. Justin Metzler, and we are homeboys because we're both from northern suburbs of Chicago. How you doing, Justin?
I'm doing good, Bob. Thanks for having me on. Always good to talk to a fellow Chicago guy.
And especially you competed against my Trevians, against New Trier, right?
That's right. Yeah. In my lackluster high school cross country career, I was the guy in the back of the pack, but I was still out there giving it my best.
Good for you, man. So as a guy who's 6'4", I'm imagining that triathlon was not your first sport. I'm guessing you might have been doing some basketball.
That's exactly it. Basketball guy growing up. Yeah. I sort of did the whole traditional sport thing from a super young age. I was always determined to be in sports. My parents threw me in everything: soccer, basketball, baseball, and basketball was the one that really stuck. But then I realized that my vertical leap, despite having the height, was not necessarily what it needed to be in order to be super competitive. And I was also not necessarily the fastest guy on the court. So funny enough, I actually had a tough time just like keeping up with the pace of the game. And I guess when I got to high school, I realized that my, skills in basketball weren't going to cut it. And then from there, I actually found triathlon. My dad was racing Ironmans as a kid, and he just said, "Hey, dude, I know, you've tried basketball thing. I was playing a little bit of golf." He's like, "Why don't you just come and train with me and my 40-year-old friends?" And I linked up with him, started doing triathlon, and then pretty much never looked back.
Now, there's that, Multi-Sport Maniacs, that group in Chicago? Is that part?
Yeah, that was, as well? I wasn't part of that. I was part of this group. It was called Triumph, and it was based out of Glenview. Yeah. If you know Triumph, yeah. So I started working, my dad was working with this coach. Her name was Kate Schneiderback, and we had this little group. We had a couple coaches there, one of which was Melissa Savage. Her husband was the head cross country and track coach at DePaul in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I hung kind of around people who knew what they were doing. And despite, I was pretty slow in the early stages, but I felt like I at least had good people in my corner at an early stage to sort of set the foundation for not only me, establishing some longevity in the sport, but really enjoying it.
So you got into the sport, 2014 USA Triathlon Rookie of the Year. So obviously you came in and announced your presence with authority right away. How long did it take you to realize that maybe your strength was more longer distance?
I mean, pretty much right away. Like there were a lot of, Chicago, I guess, in the Illinois area actually has a pretty significant junior triathlon scene.
Yes.
So they had, at the time, Lucas Verbickus, Ben Canute came out of that area. Those were all the guys who were sort of in that ITU developmental pipeline. And like, to explain where I came from, my dad and I would run, our Sunday long run was like 10K, and it would take us over an hour to run 10K.
Yeah.
And that was blazing fast for us at the time. And so I think my high school PB for 3 miles was like an 18:30 or something. And so really I just started doing it out of place of like very, very much enjoyment and sort of like just completing the distances. And so I guess just never being in that ITU pipeline, it just never was for me. And it was kind of one of those things where because my dad was racing long course, that's something I wanted to do. So I actually did my first long course race when I was 15 at the Spirit of Racine triathlon before it was bought by Ironman. And then I loved it. It was the best. I had the best time. And I actually wanted to go back when I was 16 and 17, but Ironman, when they bought the race, have a rule that you have to be over 18 years old. So I had to I wasn't able to do the race those 2 years, but I came back when I was 18, a little bit quicker, and kind of showed those guys what the deal was.
So when did you get the feel that, okay, I think I'm good enough to go pro here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say about a year or two that my parents, realized that I was pretty serious about it. So I was 13 when I did my first triathlon. 14, 15, I was still developing. I got into the cross country thing sort of to supplement triathlon. I wasn't by any means trying to run. It was always in fact, I would run the cross country season, then I would do the indoor track season, and then go to shift to triathlons because it would overlap the outdoor track season.
Yeah.
So I was really focused on doing triathlons, kind of like the local sprint and Olympic scene. And I guess when I went to college, I went to the University of Iowa. And when I got there, I was sort of full-time athlete, part-time student, if I'm being 100% honest.
Yeah.
I took triathlon so seriously. I took training so seriously. And it was sort of in that time, you know, when I was 18, 19 years old, 17, 18, 19, when I realized like I had this dream of being a professional athlete my whole life. And I thought that was sort of like a dream that never was going to be realized. And finally, I'm sitting there saying, I think I actually have a shot at this. And from there, I really, really put a lot of attention into my training, and that, you know, I trained a ton, way too much at the time, but I was doing 30 hours a week, every week for like 2 years. And that kind of just skyrocketed my career, got better, and I was able to turn pro.
So you win Challenge Iceland. What the hell? I've never heard of Challenge Iceland. Let's see, I want to go to a place where there's Bahamas, there's Bermuda. I think I'm going to go to Iceland. What the heck? How'd you end up there? And I'm imagining it was spectacular.
It was incredible. I mean, that race is probably one of the most special events to me in my life, because it was my first 70.3 professional win. And then that was actually, Jeannie and I were just dating at the time, but she also won that day. Yeah. So we had kind of like a double win, which was very, very special for us. And then we toured Iceland together. And that was sort of like a formidable time, not only in my career, but also in like my relationship with Jeannie. So I look very fondly upon that race. But I guess in terms of how I got there, I turned pro in 2014, and I kind of raced the US circuit in 2014 and 2015. And then 2016, you know, a lot of these races around the world started popping up. Challenge Europe was, you know, beginning to start new races. Ironman was starting to put races all over the globe, and they were holding professional fields, not with large purses or anything. But at the time, you know, I was 22, 23 years old. And for me, I was like, all right, well, if I can make enough money from the prize money to pay for the trip, I'm happy with that. So I would go and, you know, I'd invest $1,000, make $1,000 back from whatever my race winnings were. And it was an amazing experience for me. So I pretty much, I mean, if you look at my rap sheet of races, I've been to almost every corner of the globe doing half Ironmans, which was an incredible experience, not only as an athlete, but as, you know, a young person to be able to travel. So it was great.
Yeah, and in 2018-19, you win Challenge San Gil. And now when you went out with Jeannie for the first time, was she Jenny or Jeannie then?
Well, that was funny. She's always been Jeannie, but her name is spelled oddly, or I guess like uncommonly. And I remember going on the first date with her and not knowing how to say or pronounce her name. And I went home to my friend and I'm like, all right, I really, really like this girl, but I don't know how to say her first name. And I was too, like, we had been beyond the stage at the point where I could ask her how to say her name. You know, we had spent like hours together. So ultimately I like had to ask a friend or whatever, but I figured it out.
But she didn't say anything.
No, I think I like was kind of skirting the subject. I wasn't like, hey, you know, Jenny or hey, Jeannie. I was just like avoiding saying her name altogether. You know what I mean?
Yo, let's go out here. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So when you're a kid, you've got posters of Timothy O'Donnell and Julie Dibens. And now you train with T.O. and you're coached by Julie.
Correct.
That is pretty cool. That is really cool.
It's been pretty incredible. I think like that for me has been something that I suppose I take for granted now. You know, I've been a pro I'm going on my 8th year as a pro. Yeah. And I think, you know, I'm 27 now. I'm not necessarily the kid on the block. I think there was a time when I was 19, 20, 21. I remember going to my first pro race and Greg Bennett was there. And that was like a big deal for me. And then I moved to Boulder and then I hung out with Greg Bennett at a party here. And it was just like he was a normal guy. And I had the same sort of experience with guys like Craig Alexander, obviously Tim, Mirinda, Julie, and then getting to know these people. It's been awesome because, you know, I can call a lot of them friends now. Someone like Tim, I can call like a very close friend and a mentor. You know, obviously Julie, very similar. So it's kind of a trip. I need to sometimes remind myself of where I came from, you know, having their like Trek K-Swiss poster up in my room and like going and standing in line and waiting for an autograph from these guys. Yeah. At the Chicago Triathlon. That was like a big deal for me to go wait in line and get an autograph. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. So in Galveston, you were 9th. and Jenny was second, right?
Correct. Yep.
That's a pretty good day for you guys.
Yeah, we're putting it together. Like, I think now's a unique time and an interesting time because you've got there's a lack of racing, right? Coming off the pandemic. All the races are super concentrated. There's no racing happening in Asia. There's no racing happening in Europe, very little in South America, none in Canada. So you've only got these select number of North American races and everyone rocks up. So I had arguably one of my best ever 70.3 races. Actually, if you look at it, the PTO is scoring races right now and is one of my highest scored events of my career.
2 places, right? You went up, I think you gained 2 places in that race in the PTO
Correct.
races. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and I had a little bit of a mess up. I forgot my number belt in the second transition, and so I ran like 400 meters out of the transition, had to run back. So I lost about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And the PTO rank is based off time. So I'm saying to myself, wow, okay, I had one of my best ever swims, second out the water behind Ben Canute, had a really good bike, which is kind of my relative weakness right now, but a personal improvement. And then I had my best ever run, a 111, which that's blazing fast. That day 2-3 years ago would have won or been on the podium at many 70.3. So it's just, we're moving in the right direction. And obviously touching on Jeannie's race, I think she's reminding the world how world-class she is. And it's just great to see her back on form, happy. She's got a new coach. She's got a new bike sponsor. Things are just falling in place for her and us. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of the year has in store.
It was tough for Jeannie not having racing, right? That whole COVID time, he beat anybody down.
Yeah, I think, she was, it's an interesting thing. She's 29. She just turned 29. She's kind of coming into the prime of her career. She's someone who's been top 10 at 70.3 worlds twice, qualified for Kona on debut, third at Ironman Texas in 2019. And just like a really, really talented athlete and someone who's highly, highly motivated by competition. And I think when you take that away from someone who, that's a lot of what drives them every morning to get up, it puts them in a tough position. So yeah, it was a tough time for us, I guess, just kind of like trudging through the lockdown. Thankfully, we had those PTO races at the end of 2020, which were great. Jeannie won 2 of those, I won 1. And then we both went to Daytona. So that was good. But I think we're hopeful that this year is a little bit more normal and we can all get back on track. So for her to rebound, come second at Galveston, just a minute off Sky. And I'll touch on her run quickly. She had the 6th fastest all time 70.3 run. So that was pretty impressive.
Really impressive.
And so, yeah, here's your warning to the other girls. Jeannie's coming in hot. She's motivated to ride a little bit harder, and she's got the run. She's in crazy run shape right now, so it's going to be good.
You took 10th at St. George in 2018, so obviously you know the course well. Talk a little bit about the St. George Challenge, because when I look at the start list, it looks like, I know 70.3 Worlds is going to be there in September, but it looks like 70.3 Worlds is going to be there next weekend. There's 80 pros, men or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I was talking to my mental coach this week, and we were just chatting through that, right? Because you've got, a unique year in what I alluded to earlier, in the fact that all these races are going to be competitive, and something like Galveston, and we saw Haines City last weekend, super, super competitive, but St. George seems to be almost double that. Yeah. And I think part of that is because it's, triple the prize money. So it's worth the investment and the risk for some of the international guys and ladies to come over and say, all right, I'll invest $2,000-$3,000 in the trip because I think I can be in the top 10. But that has made it super, super competitive. So yeah, I mean, I think there's 75 or 80 men and then over 40 women, which is crazy numbers. Yeah. Jeannie's, the ranking system's kind of weird how Ironman puts a bib list together, but Jeannie's number 12. Anytime she's number 12, I know that there's a lot of good people rocking up. So it's going to be exciting, dynamic race on both sides.
So we're 11th in the PTO thing right now? Is that where you're standing?
Correct. Yeah, I'm 11th American.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the Collins Cup ranking, which I'm definitely still like a very outside shot at that. Thankfully, we've got a lot of racing that to do this year, and I'm confident that the work I've done over 2020 will hopefully set me up in a position to have 3 good scores for 2021. I think Galveston was a really good first hit out. I think I need probably 2 scores better than that, plus Galveston or another one that's even higher, in order to kind of put myself in the contention for what would likely be a captain's pick. The top 4 are pretty solidly, they've put their line in the sand there. But we'll see if I can bump into Dave Scott on the road try and get a captain's pick with, so, based off my merit of performance, but we'll see.
But the whole thing, the PTO and the Collins Cups added a whole measure of interest into the sport, don't you think?
I think massively, yeah. And I think it incentivizes us and to push harder, right? Yeah. And it also contextualizes race results. I think a lot of us in the past got caught up in podiums, and it was podium or bust. If you came fourth or you came seventh, it was a loss on the day. And I think part of that was the fact that there's no money, right? Sure. Once you get off the podium, it's really worthless. You end up losing on the trip for the most part. But now with the Collins Cup, you go there and you say, all right, this is an investment in potentially what could be an invitation to the Collins Cup and a guaranteed $20,000. So you say, all right, I'll break even or take a loss coming fifth. If I go real fast, it doesn't matter. I've just got to put myself in a position to qualify for the Collins Cup, and then also move yourself up in the rankings for the end of the season payout, which is a $2 million end of season bonus. So yeah, I mean, it's great because we're all getting faster. I'm getting faster, but the other guys are getting faster too. So it's just trying to find a way. I either need the other guys to slow down, which they're not, or I need to find a way to really bridge, a pretty significant gap. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the races here. I feel like I'm making good strides.
Love it. Well, you're working with Matt Dixon, right? So that's got to be a good thing.
I'm working with Matt Bottrell.
Oh, I'm talking about Matt Bottrell.
Yeah.
And you're working with
Dixon's a
Julie.
Hot name. Yeah.
He's amazing.
Correct. Yeah. So Matt and Julie work together. And I think I saw that model work first with Tim Don.
Yes.
He was kind of the first one who brought Bottrell into the equation. And so they worked really successfully together. Tim had that, very successful race in Brazil where, he went 740 or whatever it was at the time, the Ironman world record, and might still stand depending on what it is. And then Tim O'Donnell and Matt Hansen, they sort of followed that mold. And then, I'm kind of the young guy coming through. And when you're training with those guys, you kind of watch and learn and observe. You see the success they're having. You're like, all right, well, let's make that equation the same for me.
And the big change, if you look at it, if you go back to the late 80s, early 90s, at the times the guys were running at Kona, they're running 240, 241, and they were swimming, 50 minutes. That doesn't change that much. It's all been on the bike, right? Where you got guys back then riding 428, and now they're riding 410. So
sure.
If you don't have a cycling coach to get you to that level, you're not competitive.
Yeah. And I think I recognized that pretty early. I saw the shift in the sport happening sort of early 2019. And I think there's been a kind of general shift in the bikers taking over, with the likes of Lionel coming in. You've got someone like Sebastian Kienle. Cameron Worth changes the game, right? Now you've got someone like Sam Long, a young guy really laying it down on the bike. These guys are proving that the race is won and lost on the bike. That might shift in years to come. But I think right now I'm like, well, my cycling isn't up to par with the guys. I think my swim and my run are class splits, but I'm losing time on the bike. So yeah, me and Matt have been working super, super diligently to try and bridge that gap on the bike. And we're making good progress. It just takes time because these guys, they just, someone like Lionel, or Sebastian, those guys push insane power. So I'm just working every day to try and get stronger.
Yeah. And this is a good bike course, right? It's got some great climbing on it, but it's a fair course. The best athlete's going to win this race because it's hilly bike, hilly run, just a brutal day. So it's, there's no sitting in on a course like this.
Yeah. And I think that's helpful to me because I feel like I always perform better on the hardest courses because I don't necessarily know if, when it comes to half and below, if I'm necessarily the most genetically gifted guy. I think that there are guys who have more genetic, talent. I think I've got a lot of talent in Ironman, and I'm hopeful that down the road, my Ironman career will speak for itself. I haven't done many Ironmans, but all of them have shown good potential in that department. So usually the races that are a little bit harder suit me better because it tends to be a little bit more time. And there's going to be some guys who, like you said, there is no sitting in. So it just comes down to who wants it the most. And I tend to race with a lot of hunger and desire. So I'm hopeful that gets me somewhere in St. George and for the rest of the race this year and beyond.
Hey, Justin, great to connect with you and get to chat with you. I love the fact that you're from the hometown, man. That's bringing respect to the North Shore of Chicago.
That's right, man. North Shore, Wilmette, Gilson Beach, man, those are my stomping grounds. I have so many fond memories of that place. Yeah, great place to grow up, and hope great place to set up a triathlon career. If you're in Chicagoland and you're a kid doing triathlon, keep going, because anyone can make it out and land in Boulder racing with the best.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, best of luck at St. George, and we'll definitely catch you after the race. So fun to chat
Thanks,
with you.
Bob. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yes. Thank you, buddy, for spending so much time with us.
Of course. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Again, Breakfast with Bob, Not Quite Kona edition. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.